What you're witnessing is the dying scream of addicts who realize that tomorrow they're going into recovery because this town, Congress, has been addicted on spending opium or other people's money for a long time. And that's what you're witnessing today is this desperate cry of individuals who don't want to see fiscal responsibility. But we've gotten to this point, and it's a point of, we're getting close to where we're at a point of no return.
The national debt stands currently at about $36.2 trillion, and every day, the U.S. spends about $2.6 billion paying the interest on that debt. The national debt grows when the U.S. government borrows to fund the deficit, or the gap between what it spends each year and what it takes in revenue, such as taxes and tariffs. The Treasury is limited by law on how much it can borrow to fund government obligations. The debt has grown so much over the past century, the U.S. has come close to hitting this limit. Most recently, Congress voted to suspend it in 2023 after the government briefly breached it and authorized either suspending it or raising it nearly 80 times since 1960.
Talking about threats, in my opinion, that is the biggest threat up here. And not a lot of people in the Beltway think about it or even want to think about it. But when you're running, close to 37 trillion in debt, 2 trillion annual deficits, you know that this ship is headed off a fiscal cliff. And some of us are trying to turn the wheel to buy us more time and try and get our fiscal house in order. And there's many people up here that could care less.
Well, it looks like this administration would now like to keep us from getting embarrassing information about them. But the fact of the matter is, we are spending an incredible amount of money on these outside contracts. And from what we have seen, our taxpayers are not being protected from waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption.
Whistleblowers risk their careers to challenge abuses of power and gross waste of government resources. At a time when America needs the best value for every dollar spent, we need these protections now more than ever.
Current economic climate, it does have all people tightening their belts across the country. The same is true for our federal government. Congress has the responsibility of safeguarding taxpayer funds by eliminating instances of duplication and wasteful spending.
In 2009, federal agencies made nearly $98 billion in improper payments in just one fiscal year. This is more than double the budget for the Department of Homeland Security and triple the budget of the National Institute of Health. These improper payments occur as a result of fraud or from poor fiscal management systems that do not detect or prevent mistakes before federal dollars are already out the door. There is no question that we must do more to tackle our national debt. While the debate grows increasingly partisan, the solutions seem sometimes out of political reach. But this proposal is not. It will cut down on fraud and waste by requiring agencies to develop and implement action plans to avoid improper payments.
We cannot keep our promises on Medicare. We simply must make the cuts in waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare so that the benefits and the premiums are untouched. We owe it to our seniors. We owe it to our country.
When I hear my friend Dave Camp say you cannot cut money out of Medicare, well, we don't want to cut the good stuff that you point out, or add the prevention. But if we're going to, if what Senator Coburn says, that 1/3 of Medicare doesn't go to patient care, you can't just get up there and say we don't want to cut anything out of Medicare. We want to cut the bad stuff and keep the good stuff.
We should focus on building upon the reforms of the ACA and creating better efficiencies within the system, including innovative ways to combat fraud and waste. Standing up to protect Medicare includes supporting the constant work that must be done to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and I'm committed to working with my colleagues now and in the future to help address this ongoing threat.
I mean, it's just, I feel like we live in a clown world. It's wild to me, Bradley, because I watch these Democrats and they're just freaking out over Elon Musk. It's a viper's nest up here and it's full of corruption.
The Department of Government Efficiency is pledging to crack down on federal credit card spending after taxpayers were hit with a nearly $40 billion bill last year. DOGE announced plans to, quote, simplify the government's credit card program, which currently has 4.6 million active accounts, more than the total number of federal employees. Watchdogs have long flagged abuse. Government credit cards have been misused for everything from luxury meals to adult entertainment. A recent audit found that 12% of Defense Department travel charges violated spending policies, including $500,000 in transactions at casinos, bars, and even the Super Bowl. Another $1.2 billion in purchases weren't reviewed by supervisors.
They're more furious with the guy who's exposing it than they are of the bureaucrats and elected officials that are orchestrating it.
Let me give you just a few examples of what these unelected bureaucrats are spending your hard-earned money on. USAID spent $2 million on transgender surgeries, hormone therapy, and gender-affirming care in Guatemala. $15 million was awarded to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan to distribute oral contraceptives and condoms. $20 million was spent to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. $50 million on Tunisia's tourism, even though it's already one of the most visited countries in Africa. Over $54 million to EcoHealth Alliance, funding the very organization linked to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. That money could be used to pay down our $36 trillion debt and take care of the American people, the very people who actually pay these taxes in the first place.
I tried to defund USAID last Congress by 50%.
USAID was established over 60 years ago with the noble intention of fostering the advancement of the developing world, a goal that could benefit the United States by creating new trade partners and stable neighbors. Unfortunately, current budget allocation at USAID indicate a shift towards a social and cultural agenda that caters to the radical priorities of woke global elites. Cutting USAID's funding by 50% would dramatically conserve taxpayer resources, otherwise wasted abroad on programs that do little to nothing to advance American interests.
Democrats stopped it and Republicans stopped it. We had more Republicans vote against it.
The yeas are 102, the nays are 326. The amendment is not adopted.
I've always wondered, what's the number? Is it $40 trillion? Is it $45 trillion? Is it $50 trillion that this house of cards finally collapses? We have about $17 trillion left in debt cap before we can no longer sell our bonds.
Hold on. Full stop. We're breaking news right here, dude.
Went down to a CPI conference with many members of the House Freedom Caucus about 2.5 months ago. They had brought in a PhD in economics, and he said, based on his modeling, he said we have $17 trillion left in debt cap before we can't sell our bonds anymore. And that's provided that there's no new war or no natural disaster that takes place where we have to, start spending more money. And that's just how dire the situation is. And that's why some of us feel like we're on the bridge of the Titanic, screaming that we're headed towards this iceberg. You still have a lot of members of Congress and the Senate whose priorities aren't to save the country or to get us on a fiscal responsible track. Their priorities are to elevate themselves in the political arena, make sure that their donors get taken care of, and make sure that they don't make any moves that put them in political hot water. And so if the president made this a priority and started lighting these folks up and telling leadership this is going to be a priority, we're going to do this, I think that's the only way that this changes.